Hi everyone, I'm Bman and today we're going to build a base together. This tutorial is aimed at new players and I'm going to assume you just bought the game, created your character and spent no more than a couple of minutes wandering around the starting location. In case you're unsure how to gather resources and craft building pieces, don't worry, I've made a separate video just for you. It will show you how to navigate the menus, craft basic tools and weapons, gather resources and get everything ready to start building your first base. In the next videos I'll show you how to use everything we built here, use thralls to liven the place up, decorate with high level items in case you want to use this design later on in the game, how to use mods to really kick up a notch, how to use this base as a part of much larger structures. To make it even more beginner friendly, I've made some common mistakes and triggered a few bugs, so that I could show you how to deal with them. One thing though, this is not meant to be a PvP base. It's designed to show basic building techniques while remaining functional for a solo, PvE or role-playing and not being a complete eyesore. Okay, let's start building. When placing foundations, hold Z and use your mouse wheel to elevate them above the grass, since the game does not remove it from underneath the buildings and it simply clips through the floor. And here's bug number 1. For no apparent reason the game won't let me build the foundation where I want to. This happens quite often and is remedied by simply building something else and trying again. Be sure to destroy the extra pieces. That's one of the reasons why you always need more building blocks than your building actually requires. I'm using a combination of square and wedge foundations in order to seamlessly connect rectangular terrace with a round tower. For now, simply follow the pattern. In a later video I will show you how to expand it further and use it for much larger and more impressive buildings. Foundations done, time to start placing the walls. This is a simple task since they snap to the edges of the foundations, but make sure to pay attention to their facing. The outside and inside surface will look different. When placing walls you can identify the faces thanks to the label in the middle. There are 3 basic wall types in the game: solid wall, window and door frame. For the first level I'm going to use only solid walls. For the terrace I'll just put another row of foundations instead of walls to give the outside of our building some variety. Bug number 1 strikes again. This time placing extra object didn't help, so I'll tackle it in a different way. I'm simply going to start building the wall from the other side. Moving on to the next level. Building pieces in Conan Exiles can be divided by their 2D footprint into 3 categories: squares, triangles and lines. To cover any area of roof, simply use the same shape as the floor below. It seems obvious in this case, but things can get confusing pretty fast when you're trying to cover complicated structures with sloped roof. So remember, if you have any problems, just use the floor as your guide. Entrance to the tower will be on this level, so it's a good idea to put some stairs outside now, so that I won't have to climb over the walls all the time. I'm going to use ceiling tiles now to recreate the exact same pattern as the floor below. The difference is I'm going to start from the walls now and fill the center last. I'm doing it this way because this ensures that all pieces get proper support. To put it simply, every building piece you place needs to be somehow connected to the ground, either directly or by other pieces. The way the pieces are connected is very important here. Stacking foundations on top of one another is never going to be a problem, but expanding horizontally may be a challenge. For example, should you try to build a very large hall, you might find that you need to place some pillars in order to provide enough support for the roof. If you find that you can't snap a ceiling tile to another, or you can place a piece of roof but are unable to rotate it the way you want, then you probably don't have enough support and need to place some additional walls or pillars below it. Let's get back to our tower. I am following a simple pattern of alternating windows and solid walls. There are other ways to do this, so experiment, be creative, or simply follow what I'm doing. Whatever pattern of walls you've chosen, make sure to be consistent. Sometimes the thing you want to build will refuse to rotate or snap in a way you want it to or at all. Try moving around. Often a change of perspective will fix the issue. To properly place doors for balconies, take a quick look over the edge. First balcony should be over the entrance and the second one above the terrace. If you're unsure where to put walls so that they follow the established pattern, take a quick look at the walls near the stairs. I want to place inverted sloping walls, just as a decoration, below the balcony. This is not their designed role, so getting them to snap will be tricky. As predicted, they don't snap the way I want them to, so for now I move on. We've reached the top of the tower. As a finishing touch, I'm going to place fence around the top and along the edges of the balconies. time to decide what to do with the basement. Of course, I was thinking about the tower all the time and actually completed the full circle of walls here, effectively locking myself out of the room under the terrace. To fix this, first I'm going to go back up a bit, find the entrance to the terrace and get my bearings, so that I know which wall to destroy. Then it's decision time. I can either leave it as one big room or replace the wall with a door and keep it divided. An armory, storage or a prison would fit one big room well, but I have other plans for decorating it, so I'm choosing second option. Placing the shrine is going to be a bit tricky. I jumped on the fence on the left to get better perspective and then used the wooden beams as a guide. I rotated the shrine with mouse wheel, then used small mouse movements and strafing for final adjustments. It's not perfect, but looks good enough. Also be sure to check that the bug does not clip through the fence. When building your own designs, you may often find yourself in a situation where your building is almost complete and then you suddenly get some new idea that's just too good to pass, and you have to add new elements to an already complex building. In this case, I want to add inverted sloping walls as a support for the balcony. When I tried to place them earlier, they never wanted to snap correctly, so now I have to tackle the problem head on. There's a few different ways to approach the situation. Easiest one. Simply move around and you might get lucky. Problem is, here you will need to build some temporary foundations to walk on, or if you're in a solo mode, use admin panel to enable flying. If this fails, try removing surrounding elements. Here the wall can snap at many different angles to many different elements, so reducing complexity might help the game understand what you're trying to accomplish. Also, sometimes you have to place things in a very specific order. Finally, remember what I've told you about placing roofs? This rule also applies here, so simply build walls and place the sloping wall on top. I know it looks absurd, as they don't even touch, but what we see on the monitor and how the game's engine sees it are two completely different things. The best advice I can give you is to experiment with new ideas in solo play using admin mode to get infinite resources so that you won't waste time gathering materials, and commit to building online only when you know exactly what you're doing. We're almost done. Usually at this stage I go back a bit and take a look at the whole building, trying to spot any places that still need some work. In this case I'm going to use fence foundations to finish the base of the tower, sloping walls to add sides to the stairs, and I'll put fences around the entrance. The building stage is finished. Time to add some lights. Trying to put the hanging brazier above the door doesn't really work, as it hangs a bit too low. So let's try the pillars instead. First one's okay, but it seems we have a problem with the right one. To show you what's happening, I installed a mod called Less Building Placement Restrictions, because it adds this neat little arrow to the outline of the object. Now watch what happens to the pillar when I rotate the wedge foundation. It's not in line with the square anymore. Depending on the surrounding blocks, the starting rotation of the wedge will vary, so in order to fix this you simply need to rotate it manually with the mouse wheel, and without this mod, find the right orientation by trial and error. Now that the building is complete and well lit, it's time to start filling it with stuff. At this point, in my experience, one of two things happen. I either don't know what to do, intimidated by all the empty space, or I have way too many chaotic ideas and, well, still don't know what to do. That's why I follow a certain set of rules. Looking at our little tower, this may seem like overthinking it, but you might find them useful later when trying to build far larger structures. When designing the interiors, I always try to make clear divisions between areas according to their function. This tower needs to accommodate three elements: living, worship, and crafting. It's not only about aesthetics. Gameplay should always be considered during the design process. Most of the time you will explore the world, then return with resources to use in crafting, so easy access to all workbenches is a must. Shrine should also be considered a crafting station, but requires a separate area due to its size. As for the living space, the only thing you really need is a bed to respawn. The rest is just decoration and is important only if you enjoy role-playing with your friends. That's the gameplay perspective. So with that in mind, let's divide our tower. The first room we enter will act as a hub connecting all three areas. The living space will take most of the tower, the terrace serves as a nice base for the shrine, and the basement, with its low ceiling and two rooms, will be perfect for crafting. The first room will be the kitchen and the other one a workshop. Why not the other way around? Well, I always get excited about getting cool new armor and weapons and rush to the forge, then sprint out to get that one last iron bar or whatever else I need. Then 5 minutes later I find myself far away, starving or barely alive with no way to heal. But thanks to this design, I always have to go through the kitchen to remind myself that I should check if I have supplies. The placement of crafting stations is not random either. When entering the workshop, cool stuff is off to the sides, while Fireball Cauldron is right in the center of the view as a subtle reminder that I should make some healing potions, and when I'm done with crafting and go back, the fireplace will be the first thing I see, again, reminding me to get some food for the road. After gameplay considerations, the other thing I keep in mind when deciding on a room layout is privacy. Basically, any kind of room or building will fall somewhere on the line ranging from public to private. Imagine you're living in a block of flats. The street outside is a public space, the hallways are semi-public and your flat private. Then, on a smaller scale, consider a situation where an apartment includes an office, living room and bedroom. A stranger might come into your office to do business. You'll invite your friends and family to the living room, while the bedroom remains completely private. In its simplest form, this translates into distance from the entrance. The more private a room or building is, the farther it should be placed. If you'd like some examples, you can watch my Aquilonian Estate video and pay attention to the room layout. And if you'd like to see how you can fit almost whole privacy spectrum into a single room, check out my Fallout 4 Minuteman Castle and skip to the General's quarters. For our tower I decided to make a dining room, an armory above it, and a bedroom on top. After placing bed, the base is now game ready, but still kinda empty, so let's continue. As for the interior lights, I always wait till nightfall before placing them, to clearly see where they are needed, since the walls do not block light from external sources. Usually I don't bother putting lights near crafting stations, as furnaces, forges and campfires produce more than enough light when in use. I always start decorating with the floor, as it's easier than trying to put carpets later on when the room's full of furniture. Also, colorful carpets will make for a nice change from the monotony of sandstone and wood. I decided to use different colors for each floor and made sure to rotate each piece of the carpet so that the pattern flows seamlessly. Carpets are in place, so it's time to add furniture and decorations. I'm going to start with the dining room. Since this guide is meant for new players, I'm going to use wooden and ceramic items since they require relatively low level to make, but also they fit the theme of the base wall. In one of the upcoming videos I'll show you how the decorations would change for high level character. The weapon racks come in two varieties, single and triple. Both can hold any kind of weapon. Simply approach one and press the interact button, default E, and then drag a weapon from your inventory to any of the empty slots. For triple racks, each slot corresponds to a position on the rack, with the leftmost being the top. You don't have to fill them all in order or at all, so you might for example have a weapon in a top and bottom only. This is especially useful when placing axes, since they might clip if placed next to each other. Shield racks are single slot and are used in exactly the same way as weapon racks. You might have noticed the wall to the right of the door used to have a window, in accordance with the pattern we established at the beginning of the construction. I have switched it for a solid one since it gives me more space for weapon racks and thus fits the armory better. This is one of the drawbacks of the building method I've chosen. There are two main ways you can approach building, shell and inside out. Shell building means that you create the outside first and don't bother with any kind of internal structure at all unless you need support for the roofs or something to stand on. The main advantage of this method is that you can build huge, impressive building really fast and also make it fit with your chosen location really well. But then, when you start dividing it internally into corridors and rooms, you might find that not everything you wanted to build will fit nicely inside. I've built my Yamatai castle using this method and had some problems, mostly with staircases. Still, this is fast, easy and efficient method. Just make sure you have some spare resources and be ready to make some changes once you start building the interior. The inside-out method is the complete opposite of the first one. You start by making the rooms, furnishing them and then build walls around them. It's very useful when you want to place large objects like shrines or wheels of pain inside, or maybe you want to build a large manufacture with dozens of crafting stations, which makes a lot of sense for crafting high-level items. Or you have this great design for an impressive throne room while having only a vague idea of what you want to do for the exterior. The main issue with this method is that from the outside, you're left with either a chaotic mess or incredibly dull primitive shape, and then you either leave it like that or spend a lot of time and resources to make it look better. These methods are not mutually exclusive, and often a combination of both may be the best. There's also a third method. Do a lot of research, calculate required space, and use pen and paper to design everything in detail. But come on, this is a game, not a job. Still, if that's what floats your boat, then go right ahead. No matter which method you prefer, as long as you get that nice feeling of satisfaction when looking at your completed building, it was the right one. To finish this stage of construction, I've placed well, Wheel of Pain and Animal Pen next to the tower. Finally, I added small wall to keep any stray croc out of the yard. Next video in this series will cover thralls, pets and crafting. I hope you found this tutorial useful and return for the next part. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you don't know how to get resources and make items necessary to complete this tutorial, I've made a video explaining the interface, character controls and showing how to get from the cross to the build site while getting everything you need on the way. I'm not a native English speaker, so if anything I've said is confusing or unclear, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to explain it better.